the Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Hello, and welcome back to the show. Today, we're talking about the science of appreciation in the workplace. That thing your boss thinks they're doing when they say, good job, what's your name again? That kind of thing, right? So I'm Stephen Sakach, here once again with Tullio Siragusa and Ash Maher. Hey, guys.
Hey.
All right. So appreciation, gratitude, recognition, these are powerful emotional experiences. They have significant physical effects on us. So I want to dive into the neuroscience here a little bit briefly. These feelings can show how they can positively influence our mental and physical health. So real quick, let's just cover what's going on with us when we're receiving and giving appreciation. So first off, you have higher levels of oxytocin. These are enhancing feelings of connection and trust among our team members, leading to stronger, more cohesive teams. This also reduces stress and promotes a sense of calm and well-being. And when employees are feeling appreciative, their cognitive functions such as problem solving, creativity, and critical thinking, these all improve. And this can lead to better performance and more innovative solutions in the workplace. It also helps with neuroplasticity, so developing positive neural pathways, making individuals more resilient to stress and better able to adapt to new situations. And then, of course, there's the dopamine release that not only makes us feel good, but it also reinforces the behavior that led to its release. This means that when we are appreciated, we are more likely to continue performing well and contributing positively to the workplace. Tullio, I want your thoughts on this last one, and that is that expressing and receiving appreciation lowers cortisol levels, thereby reducing stress. So the key note there is that it's not just receiving it, but expressing it as well.
Yeah, and this is such a key thing because we often think of appreciation as something we like to feel appreciated, but it's dependent on someone else doing the act of appreciation. So if you're not surrounded by those who appreciate you enough, you'll end up empty, right? So, but the beautiful thing about I did this research on called the laws of emanation, where when you express it, in order for you to express it to someone, it has to flow through you. So in that act, you actually activate that state of being, that state of mind. So when I'm in a state of showing appreciation towards someone, I'm activating gratitude. That's the only way I can show appreciation. So in that activating gratitude, I experience appreciation and gratitude. I experience all the chemical reaction of, having shown appreciation. But don't let my words, convince you. Maybe we got some stats and some data that Ash can share on this.
Yeah, no, we did some research on this topic. So from the impact of employee recognition and appreciation on retention from Gallup study, said companies that foster a culture of appreciation have 31% lower voluntary turnover rates compared to those that do not prioritize recognition. From a study done by the Health Benefits of Gratitude, a Harvard Health study publishing, says people who feel appreciated and valued in their personal and professional lives tend to have stronger immune systems, lower blood pressure, and better heart health, which is actually interesting. Another study, now this is on the impact of business. The business impact of employee recognition is on a Forbes article. Companies with a strong recognition program have 2.5 times higher revenue growth compared to those without such programs, highlighting the economic benefits of fostering a culture of appreciation. So then there's the state of employee recognition. Organizations with strong recognition programs are 12 times more likely to have strong business outcomes. And then the last one, the study done by Employee Recognition, Low Cost, High Impact by Gallup, a culture of appreciation leads to a 26% increase in employee morale and a 22% decrease in workplace conflicts. Wow.
Yeah. I like to say that if there's, if you can't do this and be appreciative and express gratitude as just being a nice person, and you're trying to sell this to your bosses, here's the data. Give them some data, and then, you can push it through that way.
Yeah, exactly. If it's all about the business, well, the data suggests that's a good business tactic. But to add to the study, there was actually the longest standing study that's ever been done. It's still ongoing. I think it's done by Harvard. They've studied couples for the past almost 100 years, and those who lived the longest had one thing in common. They had a sense of appreciation, that they expressed appreciation towards each other. So there is definitely longevity tied to both receiving appreciation and giving appreciation. I found that study so fascinating. It's not even about love. It's like really about appreciation. It plays such a critical role in our health. That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So let's dive into a little bit some of the causes of the lack of appreciation in the workplace. So, there's a lot of things going on. Why aren't companies diving into this? Tullio, what comes to mind for you?
Well, the first thing is probably high stress environments, just a high pressure workplace, very much focused on results, prioritizing results over people. It's in most cases unrealistic results. Yeah, case in point, believe it or not, a lot of the people who actually suffer the most from this are salespeople. It's not uncommon for an organization or a CEO to say, hey, we need to go hire some new sales guys who really top of the game. They're going to bring in the business. And then you look at their stats. There's actually companies where employees self-report their performance stats, and like only 30% of the team is at quota. So it's like you just keep replacing, hoping that changes things. But the problem is the actual culture is a high pressure culture. Maybe the product's not the right fit. So that's one high stress environment when it's not realistic. The expectations aren't realistic. And people feel overlooked or worse, marginalized, which decreases morale. And that's tied to, in many cases, poor leadership, which is, again, tied to understanding the dynamics of people and the human beings involved in all this, and trying to treat people like cogs. That creates tremendous stress and demotivates employees. It actually creates very toxic cultures. Everybody's just looking over each other or competing for each other or jockeying for who's going to be the favorite. It's just not healthy. And that creates tremendous stress. And then finally, inadequate training, expecting people to perform at a level without having provided the detail or the necessary skills or training for them to do their job. And this causes a lot of employees to feel like they're not appreciated, or worse, they're neglected. So there's the opposite of being appreciated, feeling neglected. And it's worse when you hire someone new into an organization and you make all these promises, like, we're going to do training, we're going to help you, we're going to support you. And then that doesn't happen. So from day one, within a week, those people are like, oh my gosh, I made a mistake. And that creates tremendous stress. So those are some of the big contributors in the workplace to employee stress, or a sign of lack of appreciation, these kinds of environments.
Yeah. Ash, what comes to mind for you? What are some of the areas that you see businesses sort of fail here?
So having a little bit of experience, I'm coming from organizations like this where there was a barrier of communication. I think that was a big issue, where everything's super, super task oriented, to the point where you have no time to even communicate with your team or colleagues to convey any level of communication. So that was a big issue there. Another one is, I find that a lot of organizations focus more on the issues that arise and what they've done wrong, and they nail down on those conversations versus strengths and what we're done right. We find when we have optimization meetings with certain organizations, they're mostly focusing on who can we write up for doing something wrong or making a mistake, but do they rarely have conversations of, on a weekly basis, maybe even, hey, what we did right, who we can recognize and give recognition towards, so that few people, individuals within the organization, feel like they are important and playing a part in the big picture, and so on and so forth. And lastly, it's upper management and the culture of lacking systems, right, of recognition. That, it takes from the top down to find the value and recognize your employees and understanding the morale boost that it provides them, the mental health benefits, and overall productivity, and just them feeling that they are cared for and recognized for what they're doing, the efforts that they put in. When you're able to build systems into that, I think it's something beautiful, because then it pushes individuals within the organization to communicate and work on conveying, gratitude for things that get done, especially when there are collaborative environments. So I think those are the three issues. It's literally a barrier to people focusing more on the weaknesses and the issues that arise versus on recognizing strengths. And lastly, not having systems built and of recognition. I think fall short.
With the systems, we're always talking about that. It's like build love into scalable systems. So we're talking about systems, because otherwise it's just going to be inconsistent, right? It'll happen when there's a motivation, and maybe you have a good 2 or 3 weeks or a good few months, a good quarter, but then it'll just fall off, and you're back to square one there.
Yeah.
So a couple things that come to mind for me here are employee overload. So this is one where you just see culture always just getting stretched in multiple ways. Is you've got so much to do, you just don't have time to involve yourself in other things that you're don't think or you don't prioritize as being important. So that could be expressing appreciation to each other, because you're head down, you got that task oriented process there, you're just trying to plow through that stuff. And so then when you're head down like that and you're just working like that, that's where your burnout comes to play a little bit too. So, but you always just see it when you got the overload. Another area, and this is really related to the change in our workplace right now. So it's remote work challenges. So we see this all the time. It's like you're kind of siloed in your own area, and someone can just be expecting the work from you, but you don't have that ongoing communication. It's just, like you said, Tullio, it's just you become this cog, off in some place 1,000 miles away, and you're just doing maybe even repetitive work and stuff like that. And it's just, as long as it's coming and flowing fine, everyone's fine, but there's no interaction there with you. You don't get to, have that water cooler conversations or just hand deliver something, even talk about it with someone a lot of times. And there's also, I think, lack of personal connection is another issue, right? So especially in bigger organizations, like I said, at the top of this, it's like, hey, good job. What was your name again? It's this lack of really that personal connection, just because it's just too big. Maybe there's, 500 people there, and you're trying to do the right thing, but you just fall flat. The genuine, appreciation element of this. So you can see that.
I want to add conversely to that. I've been in an organization where I remember there was the CEO. This was like thousands of employees, and somehow he remembered everybody's name. And that was so impressive.
That's huge. If you're able to do that, I mean, that's just like, wow.
He really made it a point to let people know that he knew that he remembered them. And you felt so appreciated just from that simple act of remembering the name, because it was impossible but he somehow just knew everybody's name. It blew my mind how effectively he was doing that. Like, I've tried, I can't do that, but that's someone taking the extra step to really show appreciation, in my opinion.
I picture like a Veep where you've got like the little helper whispering in your ears, "Who's this, Bubba?" Giving you the 411 on the person just before you introduce them. But so we've got some of the problems there that arise. So let's talk about solutions here. How can we fix some of these? I think, like I said earlier, is trying to implement something that's structured, a structured recognition program. Create this formal program, formal process, something with like what we do is peer-to-peer stuff a lot. So we've got that, hooked up with Slack and something that people can see, this public recognition. And it's just an easy, you've used it, Ash. How long does that take? Like just 10 seconds?
Yeah, 10 seconds. Yeah.
Basically like a high five.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for this. Super easy. That's just part of our system. We also have, in staff meeting, like the beginning of the week, one of the things we talk about is just appreciation and gratitude for someone who did us something, solid earlier in the week or helped out with something. And that's just, again, it's just part of this formal sort of process that makes it easier. It's that building that love into the scalable system, right? So that it's just, churning away, and giving people the opportunity really to be able to step in and not feel awkward about it or anything.
What I like about it is sometimes you just get so busy in the doing that you don't stop, and like you just keep going. So even if you wanted to show appreciation to someone, you just get so overwhelmed with whatever you're doing that you might forget. And so what I like about having an open system like we do, where you do that recognition openly, so it reminds the other person, like, oh yeah, that's right, I meant to do that for so and so. So it's a nice way to keep it in the forefront all the time. And even if you're the kind who just gets really bogged down in the weeds and forgets to come up for air and recognize people, you just inevitably are reminded. And it's like, oh yeah, I need to do that too. So it gamifies it. It creates, if you're going to have some competition internally, that's probably the competition you want to have. Who's going to acknowledge and appreciate that next person, right?
Yeah.
So it kind of creates a little bit of that sense of like, I want to appreciate someone too. And it really is effective to do it.
You know, when we brought that on board, it's again one of those things where it's like, well, I don't know how this is going to go, and I didn't, as kind of leadership, I don't want to make this something that's not organic and not genuine. So I'm just like, we're going to throw this out there, and I'm kind of just going to back away, right, and see what people do with it, so that it's not something like they feel forced to do, or oh, we want to do this. But like you said, it does become this sort of organic thing where it's like, oh yeah, this person mentioned this, I also want to mention this other person, so that it's something that people were very willing, to do, and something that they wanted to do, versus like, hey, I've got to check this off my list, got to do 5 of these, right? It's just, no, it's very organic. And it's one of those things too, where if you just have one person, I've mentioned this before, like, the boss or management, and they're in charge of the appreciation, that's just one torch, right? That's just one person carrying the torch there. But if you've got your whole staff in the peer-to-peer environment, then you've got, 30 torches, 100 torches, 500. It becomes this bigger thing, versus that 1 or 2 people having it fall on that, where it's just not very bright light in the organization. So,
yeah.
Tullio, what else do we got here for solutions?
My grandmother used to say, and I still don't get the saying, but I kind of get it. She used to say, the fish stinks from the head, right? When the fish starts to smell, it's the head that starts to smell first. So basically saying the leadership is where you want to address this first. So some of the things, if the culture is lacking a sense of appreciation or gratitude, training the leaders on the value of doing this and the importance of doing this. And it's got to be both the emotional, intelligent aspect of it, but also the data, factual things that we just discussed, right? Because when you close the loop on both, it makes it that much more powerful, right? So as a leader, I want to understand what's good for people, but also what's good for the bottom line. Usually that's the focus, right? So closing the loop on both is critical. And then, offer workshops and seminars that focus on effective communication. And on the emotional intelligence side, it really comes down to managing conflicts or disagreements, having methodologies to do that effectively, where you can voice out your concern, or you can even voice out your opinion. And if you're not in agreement, you can get to agree that you disagree, and do it amicably. So that takes training for some people. And also being able to look for those opportunities to give appreciation, and why it's so important. It's part of the job, so to speak, as a leader. I would almost say it's probably the most important job. Most employees will go way out of their ways if they feel acknowledged and recognized, but they'll really shine when you show that you believe in them. And you cannot show someone that you believe in them without appreciating them. Yeah. And so appreciation goes a long way to make someone feel like they believe in me. And when you believe in someone, they can accomplish things you never thought possible. So it's important to remind them that you believe in them. And the fastest way to do that is to thank them and to show them appreciation for their work.
Yeah, absolutely. Ash, What comes to mind for you on this side of the equation?
So, Steve, for me, it's incorporating technology that makes it easier, especially when companies are working in hybrid models. Some companies are fully remote. Even companies that are working in office, right? You could incorporate technology. I know, as you mentioned earlier, there's tools that I really enjoyed using with the colleagues I used to work with. Expressing appreciation through gamifying systems. I mean, especially for people who it may take a little bit more work on their end to express that appreciation, gamifying it through a point system, allowing themselves to go ahead and use those points for rewards in the future. Funny enough, even though it's silly that you have to gamify someone to express appreciation, it inadvertently trains them to start being someone who's appreciative, especially when the results end up showing. When you see the collaboration, the culture being a positive one to work at, and things are getting done, people start to buy into the idea of the concept of appreciation. Secondly, it's ingraining it in the DNA. As Tullio mentioned, it starts with the head. It's just really having an upper management culture that values appreciation within knowing that the value of what they could gain from expressing appreciation. They know that when teams feel valued, that they're willing to go above and beyond and are going to show themselves when they show that you believe in them. So if they can understand the value of that and ingrain that into the culture, that's another element of how you can really make this happen within your organization. Have people believe in the upper management, and then use technology to gamify within the organization, and you're getting everybody at that point.
Yeah, both those things, they support that cultural growth, right? So technology will just help you continually keep that going. And then, leadership, just making that part of what you do, super important. That just all gets down into your DNA. So for me too, another area, personalizing the recognition. So you can say like, hey, good job team. And that's kind of so versus like, hey, I really appreciate, Ash, what you did on this one point. I'm very direct in making that recognition. Tullio, hey, you were excellent at this other thing. That just makes it, more genuine, more heartfelt, right? So making sure you personalize it. And then some people respond to it, prefer, maybe they like the public recognition. Some people, maybe that's like the worst thing. Don't do that, please. For me, sometimes I'm just super uncomfortable with like, hey, no. But so just finding where kind of their sweet spot is, and just knowing someone that well. And then like we've said, just encouraging that peer-to-peer part of it. Whatever you can do to encourage that, to empower people, employees to recognize each other. Like I said, it's just if you're the only one who's the torchbearer there, it's just not going to be that bright of a light. So I think those are huge areas just to continue to build upon what you've already done, keep adding to it, keep layering different elements into your business until you're like coming from all different directions, with this. Tullio, some other directions we can come from.
I think the other opportunity is to create social interaction, create opportunity for social interaction. And so often enough, when a company creates a budget for something, it's got to be tied to some ROI, right? So most will say, what's the ROI in building a budget to allow for social gatherings, for travel, for team events, for team outings and things of that sort? Well, some of the data points we talked about earlier that Ash pointed out to earlier suggest that it's actually worth making sure you carve out some budget for social interaction, because it does have an impact into the organization, ultimately the bottom line. So, lunches, outings, these things are important. If you're fully remote, then make sure when you hire someone that you carve out a little bit of a budget for yearly for them to travel somewhere. Where you have maybe a quarterly meetup somewhere in the middle of the country for a couple of days. These things seem like, it's such a pain to go travel and all that, but they're so important for people to build connection. I'll never forget, earlier in my career, we would have these President's Club events. You have to qualify to go to President's Club, but it was something that everybody strived to do because it was such a beautiful recognition. It was like this lavish resort somewhere, and I remember one that was at Hilton Head. It was just like unbelievable, like transformative. And the whole weekend was all about getting recognized, right? You were like really appreciated. They just pulled out the red carpet and made you feel like that. And that's great for those who qualify. But you want to have the mindset of that everyone in the organization should feel appreciated similarly. So, having something carved out just for the elite, it's a nice thing, but make sure you carve out something for everyone, because everyone in the organization has the potential to be the elite if you give them the proper recognition and you show them that you believe in them. And so that's the key thing. So it's an investment into the future. So those, after hour things, all those things still play a big role in creating recognition. If you're remote, give a little budget for people to go have an after hour event with their family, but it's still a form of recognition.
We've kind of talked about that in the past too. If you're just focusing on like your top 10%, giving them recognition, well, then you've got the other 90% that are either feeling average or below average. And those are ones you really need to be focusing on in some way, because you can't just always, give the top percent their props and just the rest of the organization's what?
It's true. And there's always been the saying, the 80-20 rule, right? 20% of the organization produces 80% of the results. But it's a hoax, because you keep focusing on that 20% like they're the golden children, right? So that, of course, that 20% is going to produce 80% of the outcome, because they're getting all the recognition and attention. So if you don't give attention to what you call the problem child, they're going to keep being the problem child. So some of it stems from beliefs that are not serving the organization. This 80-20 rule is not a good strategy.
That's
Go
right.
expand your recognition so you can expand that 20% to become 40%, 60% or higher. It sits with the leadership to change their mindset and approach to elevate everybody else to those performance levels as well.
That's why I'm not a big fan of like those employee of the month things, right? It's just like this one person, and maybe usually always, Tracy, whenever she's always bam, bam, bam. Everyone else is just, in her wake as she's, but you're only recognizing one person, and everyone else is feeling like, it feels like it's good for the one person. And then if you switch, hey, we need to break it up a little bit, then it just becomes less meaningful.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, we're giving it to this other person, but we all really know it was Tracy who's continuing to kick ass.
Creating jealousy in the organization is not a form of the foster appreciation. It just fosters resentment.
Yeah.
What else you got, Tullio? Any other areas here we want to dive into? So we're getting close to wrapping up.
I think the other areas worth talking about is the importance of bringing awareness to having appreciation for yourself as well. That's an important thing too, because if you don't have an appreciation for who you are, it's going to be hard to express it to others. So most organizations don't invest in that kind of thing. They're like, well, go get some therapy, right? But those organizations actually do invest in helping people begin to believe more in themselves, raise their self-awareness, self-worth, self-appreciation, self-love. Those individuals, if you make that investment in helping them, will then tend to express that outwardly to everybody else. So that's another area I think is important to keep an eye on, is invest in the individuals to elevate them so that they can step into being in a state of appreciation, especially those who might have more difficulty doing it.
Yeah. And you talked a little earlier about leadership too. Don't forget, that you need appreciation in some way, and you may not get it all the time. So.
That's the other thing. Actually, I think we were talking about this offline. Once you're a senior executive in an organization, you don't get a lot of pats in the back. So you're always giving them, right, which is great. So you activate that energy, but you still need to fill up that bank too, right? You can't just give it away. So a little pat in the back, it doesn't happen as often. So join a peer group. There's plenty of peer groups where you can create an environment where you have the support that you need, the pat in the back that you need to get the recognition you want, because the higher you go in the organization, it gets very lonely, especially for CEOs. So, those CEO peer groups, they're not just about learning. It's about connecting with people who are going to appreciate something you have to contribute, who understand the need for the pat in the back. And you're not going to get that always from the organization. So that's a key thing. The other thing you could do is you could create a culture of, it's okay to recognize the executives, right? Invite that, encourage that. so that everyone feels that they're in this sense of equivalence, that we're all the same human beings that need that recognition as much as we need to give it.
Yeah, I feel somehow we've got a good enough culture at our environment where I feel like, occasionally, like I said, no, don't give it to me. But so I feel like we do a pretty good job with that. But I know other cultures, no, they're not hearing it at all at that level. And we talked about this with like the hospitals and the nurses, not feeling appreciated from the doctors, but then the doctors not feeling appreciated by the administration. So it just kind of works its way up the ladder where everyone, they need a little appreciation now and then. So let's recap here real quick. We talked about the neuroscience of appreciation, understanding how dopamine, oxytocin, cortisol, how these impact you physically and can help you or make things worse. We talked about appreciation, how it enhances engagement, productivity. Ash went through a bunch of stats related to that. And then we've got some practical solutions here that hopefully you can consider implementing, some structured recognition programs, daily appreciation practices. I think that's something we do all the time really well. And trust me, it works really well. That's it for today. Remember, expressing appreciation is not just good for the person receiving it, but good for you too. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next Bliss Business Podcast.